It's Caroline from Coral Talks. Welcome back to another episode. Happy Thanksgiving. I know Thanksgiving was this Thursday, was past Thursday for you guys when this is out. Right now it's Wednesday, so it's the day before Thanksgiving, and I'm very excited to have a very delicious meal. But happy Thanksgiving to you guys. I hope you had a nice Thanksgiving with your family, your friends. Maybe some shopping done too. Get those deals in. Welcome back to another episode. It's a solo episode this week. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode with my special guest. But anyway, let's get started. Today is going to be very exciting, but also very chill because it's Thanksgiving. I think I'm going to talk a little bit about coral spawning. Because this past week was a major coral spawning event. Let's get started with the joke of the day. Because it's Thanksgiving, I have two jokes for you. My normal marine joke and also a Thanksgiving joke. Now, what do sweet potatoes wear to bed? They wear their little cute yummies. Yes, see, we wear our jammies. They wear their yummies because yummies are so soft and cuddly and very, very comfortable. Okay, and I have a riddle for you guys. You ready? Okay. What do sharks eat with peanut butter? They eat it with jellyfish. So I have this theme of jelly today. I'm just now realizing, like we eat peanut butter and jelly with jam, but sharks eat it with jellyfish because probably they taste like jam. I don't know. Moving on to the gratefulness spotlight that we started last week for November. I know it's past Thanksgiving now, but because I missed an episode 2 weeks ago, I'm gonna make up for this. November hasn't passed yet anyway. So, gratefulness spotlight. I'm grateful for turning 17, grateful for having lovely friends, and I'm also grateful for being able to drink coffee. I know a lot of people can't drink coffee, and I'm grateful that I can drink coffee so that I can stay awake when I need to. I'm also really grateful that I'm able to smell because I was somewhere this past week and I entered this room and it smelled so serene and good. It just made me grateful that I was able to smell that, because then I remember times where I am sick and I kind of experienced not being able to smell, and it was sad because I couldn't smell my environment. I couldn't taste anything because smell and taste are connected, question mark. That was not fun. So grateful to be able to smell. Holidays this week. Thanksgiving, of course. I know I've said this for the sixth time already. But other than Thanksgiving and Black Friday, Monday, November 25th, was Play with Your Dad Day. Guys, go play with your dad, or give him a hug, or watch TV with him, go on a walk with him, spend time with him. Okay, we're never too old to play with our dads. They're really special. They're funny. Sometimes they're annoying, but go play with them. Go spend time with your dads because dads are special. November 27th, which is Wednesday, today is Beef Jerky Day. Honestly, beef jerky hurts my teeth, especially since I have braces. And I feel like every bite I take, I'm destroying my bone structure of my teeth. If you guys get what I mean? Not sure of my opinions on beef jerky. Today is also National Jukebox Day. What exactly is a jukebox? Someone please tell me, because I don't know. I'm too lazy to Google it either. November 30th is Mason Jar Day. Store Thanksgiving leftovers. What do people put in mason jars? Do they put liquids or do they put jam? What's the meaning of mason jars? I know they have this seal basically that you seal stuff with and they don't go bad, or you ferment onions or something, but what exactly is it for? That's another question I have. Holidays this week are questionable for me. I'm gonna need explanations, discussions, lots of this. And finally, November 30th is also Personal Space Day. Set your boundaries. Y'all don't have to explain and needing personal space, because that's important, that's special. The gem. Personal space when you need to recharge, when you need to get work done, lock in, when someone's disrespecting you also. Personal space is very important in all of these aspects. So, hashtag personal space. And finally, November 30th is National Mississippi Day. Yay, Mississippi! There's so much holidays on November 30th. People who created them were like, oh my goodness, this is the last day of November. I'm gonna have to fit all of these in. Interesting. Today, I have positive ocean news. It's related to coral. I don't know, I've been really obsessed with coral these days, as I should be because of the name of my podcast about coral. And before I actually talk about the positive news, I thought I could give a little background knowledge on coral in general so that you would have a little bit of pre-knowledge before listening to this positive news, so this positive news would actually mean something to you. There's two types of corals, soft coral and hard coral. Soft coral is, like its name, is a little bit soft. You can actually see it kind of wave in the ocean along with the waves. It's soft, it has a bendable appearance, and they are very flexible. So they're able to sway with the waves. And they're non-reef building coral, which means that they are surrounded by hard coral that build the reefs. They are kind of like babies. They're soft and cuddly, and they kind of provide buffer space or homes for animals and creatures. Hard coral, on the other side, is like its name. It has a stone-like casing appearance and is used to build coral reefs. And they have stiff tentacles, they have main tentacles, they're usually larger than small corals. So hard corals would come first in a new coral environment, and then soft corals will then build around its way. If you would do the pleasure of Googling these corals to see what they actually look like, some of them do look a little disgusting, a little gross, but not really. I mean, there's this one, which is the brain coral, that look like a bunch of holes, and I don't have a phobia with holes, but I just think it's really disgusting. Yeah. There's brain coral for hard coral, soft coral, Oricella coral, the coral I mentioned last week is a soft coral. There's seaweed coral or the mushroom corals. They kind of look like mushrooms. Kenya tree coral looks like a tree. Those are some of the corals that I'm gonna mention. Obviously, I don't mean anything right now because, I mean, if you're imagining what it looks like, sure. But if you want to Google them, be my guest. I would actually love you guys to Google it so you get the full vision that I'm envisioning. Alright, now the long-awaited positive news of the day. I spent so much time talking about coral in general and almost forgot to talk about the positive news of today. Off the coast of Solomon Islands, which is around Australia, all the ocean stuff, cute ocean stuff happens around Australia, honestly. They're so diverse with their marine institutions and marine stuff. It's awesome. But off the coast of Solomon Islands, this National Geographic person found the oldest and the biggest coral that's ever recorded. Is this coral colony is approximately 111 feet wide and 4 feet long and 11 feet tall. Super massive. It was just recently discovered, like last week, so it's exciting, especially because coral bleaching is also happening. This is heartwarming and wholesome to hear that this large coral colony is existing. This large colony of coral is wide enough to fit 2 standard basketball courts. It's longer than the blue whale, which is the longest animal in the world. It's super big, just this whole chunk. Imagine the amount of life that's in this coral colony. Fascinating. To talk a little bit more about how this was discovered, a group of scientists that work for National Geographic was exploring the area around the Solomon Islands, and they were on a research vessel that was researching about coral in that island, and they discovered this mass. They wondered what it was, so they sent divers and cameras and high-tech technology to see what it was, and boom, saw this massive coral. And then they actually did the tedious job of measurements, of like measuring how wide, how tall, how long the coral actually was. It's positive news to hear such a big coral colony existing, thriving in the Solomon Islands. Alright, aside from the positive ocean news, I have featured species today. The featured species of today is gonna be sponges. Not the sponges you use for your makeup, not the sponges you use to wash those Thanksgiving pans and ovens and dishes, but sponges that live in the ocean, usually down at the seafloor. They are multicellular organisms, but they don't really look like animals. They kind of belong in the same category as coral. They kind of just look dead, but they're not dead at all. They look like elkhorn coral that I talked about in the beginning of the podcast, like episode 2 or something like that, but they look like a tube and they have an opening on the top. Sometimes you may mistake them as coral, but they're sponges. And their color, they're usually vanilla-ish, yellowish. They're known as filter feeders, which means that they pump seawater through their holes on the top and through their holes on the body that are called pores. They pump the water in and out, and this water helps move bacteria, particles out, and remove any waste. They bring in oxygen and food from the water. That's how they live, that's their lifestyle. And something very interesting about sponges are that they reproduce sexually and asexually. Before I talk about reproduction, I need to talk about genders. Sponges can be both male and female simultaneously. This is a phenomenon or feature called hermaphrodites, which means that they are able to possess sperm or eggs for reproduction purposes. I just wanted to clarify, you may be wondering how that even works. How does a sponge be a female and male at the same time? How do they produce sperm and egg cells? I mean, that's just the way they are, but they produce eggs at a certain time and they produce sperm at a certain time. So I guess in a way we can just describe it as they're still exploring their identity. Sometimes they produce egg cells and they identify as a woman, and sometimes they produce sperm cells and they identify as a male. In order to determine whether a sponge is a male or female, you just look at the cells that they produce. Not that we should determine a person's gender by their internal organs and what they produce, but I guess that was just my way of explaining it and kind of putting a description on how they work. Because they produce eggs and sperm at different times, this avoids self-fertilization, which is like being able to get pregnant within themselves. Now, going back to reproduction, they can reproduce sexually or asexually. Sexually, I mean, it's just how we reproduce, they reproduce. Kind of like humans, the male sponge releases sperm cells into the water, and they kind of just follow the flow with the water, and they enter the female sponge through the hole on the top. The hole that I mentioned that was on the top of the sponge. The sperm then travels through the sponge, meets with the egg cell, and produces the larvae. The mini sponge then gets released from the female sponge onto the ocean floor, and it grows. Now, sponges can also reproduce asexually, like I was talking about earlier, which is super cool. They do so by this process called budding. Budding is when the sponge grows a little bud on the original piece of sponge. It starts from the inside, it grows and it grows out. You can see this little stub of sponge on the side lengths of the original sponge. And once it grows to a certain extent, it will eventually break off of the host sponge and clone itself and become a sponge itself and live its happy little life. It's really interesting how they can just grow internal buds and grow them out and push them out to basically self-clone. That's interesting. I do not want to self-clone myself ever, but I would want to research a little bit more about how they reproduce asexually. I think that's pretty cool. That's my featured species today. There are some holes, gaps. I could talk about this more. But maybe we'll save that for another episode. Today, that's all I'm gonna talk about because it's a featured species, so I'm not gonna go too much into detail about it. Just some fun facts and where it lives. Something that I found was cool. Let's move on. I'm gonna talk about coral spawning. Hard corals are made of tiny building blocks that are called pulps. These pulps are what makes a whole colony of coral and are eventually what helps the hard coral build a coral reef and reproduce. Pulps have a huge role in coral spawning. Before I actually talk about coral spawning, let me explain what coral spawning is. Coral spawning is another way of saying reproduction of coral sexually, and corals reproduce with eggs and sperm as well. In the process of coral spawning, the transparent pulps on existing hard corals will detach itself. The sight is absolutely beautiful. Looks like stars in the ocean floating because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of coral pulps lift up in a way and then they start flowing around with the currents, so it looks like a bunch of white transparent circles that look like stars that float around in this full body of water. It's really fascinating. And these massive amounts of pulps, some of them are eggs, some of them are sperm, they sort of rise to the ocean surface, and this is where the process of fertilization begins. The egg matches with the sperm and joins together to become an embryo, and then they develop into like tiny coral larvae, which are called planula. Then this planula, which is called planulae in multiples, they float in the ocean, they follow the current for a few days, some of them for a few weeks. They float for a while, they follow their own pace before dropping back down to the ocean floor. And then depending on the seafloor conditions, some of the planulae attaches to rocks, other coral, any kind of surface they find themselves in. That attachment starts their whole journey of growing into a new coral colony. They grow about 4 inches per year. The process of coral growing is long, takes a lot of time, and that's why it's very important for existing coral to stay existing and new coral as well to grow, because it's long, tedious, delicate, precious process. What makes coral spawning really special is because it's this mass fertilization process, it makes the growth of coral more likely to happen, and it's this synchrony that allows the eggs and the sperm to match up for this fertilization to happen. This massive spawning event is really crucial to the growth of coral. Coral spawning is an annual event that happens in the months of September, October, and November. Just recently, right before Thanksgiving, the coral spawning event in Australia, the Great Barrier Reef, happened. That was really interesting. It was talked about amongst those coral enthusiasts, and so that was interesting to follow if you Google on YouTube or pictures to see. You may be asking what causes these coral spawning events to happen. Scientists don't really know. There's not really an explanation, but it's just because of water temperatures, the chemical levels in the specific area of the water, and the growth of the pulps on the coral, and the currents, everything that surrounds these water environments takes an effect on the coral spawning events. I wanted to connect this coral spawning and the reproduction of coral with sponges because they're kind of similar. Coral can reproduce asexually with pulps too. Sometimes pulps, these migrating detached pulps, don't find their mate egg or the sperm cells. And so those pulps may attach to another surface, start reproducing themselves by the process of budding or splitting. And that's when two buds, either two eggs or two sperms, two pulps in general, they combine together and they stimulate the nullet that is supposed to help the growth of coral. It's interesting that sponges and coral are alike in the way that they both are able to reproduce asexually and sexually. I forgot to mention this, but coral spawning events only happen to hard corals because they are the building blocks of coral reefs, of colonies of coral, and therefore they're the ones that have the pulps to reproduce. Soft corals have pulps because pulps are what makes up coral itself, but they don't have the pulps that detach from existing coral and combine with other pulps to make new coral. Soft corals only come after the coral colony is made, and soft coral attaches to hard coral as their way of life. Those are some fun facts on coral spawning, coral in general, and some similarities and differences on sponges and coral. To end this episode off, like I said earlier, it's going to be really chill. So I'm just going to free fall it. There's not really a guideline that I prepared for this. I'm just going to talk about vacation spots, my dream vacation plans, just whatever flows through this spontaneous brain of mine within these last 10 or so minutes. It's Thanksgiving break, and that caused me to think about all the breaks, like Christmas break, spring break, summer break, and I was just thinking about all the places that I wanted to go, and all the places I wanted to visit and places I wanted to dive. There's so much places that I want to go. I'm going to be on my bucket list, and I'm going to have to go before I die. Honestly, I really want to go within the next 2 years. That's going to be an issue financially, time-wise, because we only have a certain amount of breaks. That's going to be hard, but your girl's a dreamer. Your girl likes to imagine things, have hopes, have high, high hopes. I was thinking about this question the other day. A person asked me if I had $2 million, what would I do? And I thought about dividing it into traveling funds and also donations. But that led me to think about my traveling plans, and if I ever had just free time, what kind of dream vacation would I do? And I have it down, guys. It's gonna be 2 months. Like, my employer, my school is not gonna see me for 2 months. I'm gonna disappear off this face of the earth for 2 months. I'm gonna go live my dream, my life of vacation. Honestly, I have to think about a travel partner because I know some of these places it's a little bit too on the nature side. We have high standards. Being really close to nature and living in the bare necessity and the rare elements of life isn't really our thing. But that's something I want to try out, and that's something that I can definitely see within my dream vacation. So honestly, I'm either gonna have to find accommodations or find a travel buddy or travel alone. But for the first month, I'm thinking Africa, like places in Africa. I would like to go visit Mozambique, Mauritius, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, mostly in East Africa. I feel like I'm really drawn to places in East Africa. I want to immerse in their culture, how closely connected they are to nature and the environment, and of course, diving. As you know me, they have super cool white sand beaches just for me to like, aside from diving, to lounge and enjoy the beauty of the white sand beach. But also they have such pretty dive sites. You can either go deep, you can go shallow, you can stay in the middle, and it's there's so much wildlife. You can see manta rays, you can see sea turtles, sharks, and so much coral. They have so much vibrant life there. It's amazing. They have good food, and the people there are super nice and so down to earth. I would love to spend a good month just traveling East Africa. Aside from all the water activities and admiring the ocean, diving, looking at white sand beaches, looking at animals in the ocean, there's also a lot of animals on land. Kenya has deserts, they have national reserves, and zebras, giraffes, wild beast mills, camels, they're everywhere. I love land animals too, so I want to go see them. They have forests, and within those forests, there's gorillas, plant life, there birds, elephants, monkeys, so much things to do and to explore. I'm obsessing over it, but I really want to go to East Africa. Nile River too. Nile River in Uganda. It doesn't end in Uganda, but it starts at Uganda, and it's so pretty. It's in a national park, and if you're more adventurous, I think there's a raft, I think. And then if you want to like calm, I think there's also a nice, just relaxing area. But then also there's crocodiles, there's hippos within the Nile River. It's just so much wildlife, both in the ocean, on land. There's so much plant life too. So that's the first month. The second month, I would like to go to Asian countries, Indonesia and Philippines. Also go diving in the Philippines because holy moly, guacamole, Philippine dive sites are breathtaking, absolutely gorgeous, and also Filipinos are one of the nicest groups of people I've ever met, and I would like to get to know their culture more and spend more time with them. Every Filipino that I've met, you can just feel that there's no judgment between they hear and they listen, and that's something really special that I've noticed in every Filipino that I've met, whether it's a nurse, my friends, or outside, out and about. Yeah, so I want to go to the Philippines, to Indonesia, to Taiwan, because it's my nationality and I've never been. So obviously, I got to go visit. I'm gonna go eat some spicy food and also dive there. Diving sites are really cool there as well. There's nudibranchs there, which I talked about last episode. There's so much like tiny little delicate creatures in Asia, in the Philippines, in Taiwan. So I think it's really cool to be able to see that compared to Caribbeans, because Caribbean like flat floor and you just see coral, sponges, fish. It's like small fish, not big fish. That's in the Caribbeans. In Baja California coast, you see kelp forests, interactive animals like the sea bass and sea lions, otters, lobsters, eels, Garibaldis. So it's more diverse, but the visibility is low in kelp forest and in the Baja California area, and it's cold. Sometimes the currents are strong, so it's a little bit harder to swim. But Caribbeans are smooth, warm waters. It's so peaceful there. Um, so there's a difference between the Caribbeans and Baja California area, but the Asian areas and parts of Africa areas are totally different from what I just described in the Caribbeans and California. The waters are pretty rough in Asia, so I've heard from other divers that originated from those countries. So it takes a lot of experience, and the roughness comes in waves. So that's something to master before actually going there. Um, I've heard areas of the countries where I want to visit. Some of them are cold, some of them are, but they have depth for sure. It's rare to find shallow places in Asia, and it's a lot of rocks, so that makes the whole area more choppy-ish. So that's definitely tougher to dive at, but nevertheless, it's still a beautiful place to dive. Realistically, I'm probably gonna have to get my advanced water diver certification first before I actually go. I feel like the experience needed to go to Asia to dive is definitely a notch higher than what I have experience in. Yeah, so I talked about my dream vacation first month going to the East Africa. Second month going to Asia, Philippines, Taiwan, Indonesia, and Korea. I'm gonna need to visit Korea because I have had an obsession with Korean dramas ever since I was little, and now I've had this obsession with this K-pop band, Stray Kids, so I'm definitely gonna need to visit Korea just for the aesthetics. Um, all of the places that I want to go, they involve diving, and I want to immerse in their culture, explore, and I feel like will really make me like connected to the environment. Obviously, there's like urban places within those countries, but I think if I plan the vacation, I'm gonna purposely plan rural areas. I feel like that kind of exposure is what I want and what is good for my soul and good for me overall. So yes, I've talked about my dream vacation, first month, second month, went on a tangent about Caribbean, kelp forest, and Asian waters and the different dive conditions, and talked about why I want to go to those countries and visit. So that's my dream vacation. Also, my friend just got certified to dive, and I want to plan a dive trip with her because I am the only one in my family who dives, and diving needs a dive buddy because you can't go diving alone. That's a little dangerous. If anything happens, or just to not be lonely because doing stuff alone sometimes is lonely. Especially with such a pretty sport like diving, you gotta have someone to admire the beauty with you and to just be there to support you through those like wearing your equipment because it's heavy, or fixing your fins, checking the amount of oxygen that you have left. I mean, just all these things that would require a dive buddy. I don't have a dive buddy right now. I just book places to dive, and my dive buddy is usually the instructor or the dive guide that comes with me for the dive that I booked. And I mean, it's a hit or miss. Most of the time, I've been really, really lucky to have dive guides that are sweethearts, caring, understanding, and just it hits the spot for me. The vibes are there. The vibes are there and they match with me. They're on the same brainwave as me. But I know that's not always going to be the case, and I understand that. Um, so I really want a permanent dive buddy, and I'm so excited for my friend who just got certified. Um, for her diving journey, for her diving adventures. She's in Hawaii right now, and I'm excited for her. But two, Also, for myself, to have a dive buddy. I want someone that I can dive with, and to make memories of the dives that I go on, to be able to have this special connection, special bond that we can talk about the things that we saw, experience, how we feel before, during, after a dive, things like that. But yeah, I think that's all I'm going to talk about for my unplanned section of want to go for my vacations and my friend being a certified diver. Thank you guys for listening today. Just a recap for myself and for you guys. Started with two awesome jokes, gratefulness spotlight, holidays this week, some ocean positive news about coral, and a featured species on sponges and their cool ability to reproduce. Talked a little bit more about coral spawning, and ended it off with dreaming, high hopes. Today is very coral heavy. I've talked a lot about coral from the beginning, but also very chill. Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode. Hopefully, it's not too long after I edit it, because right now it is very long and it's very late, so I need to go to bed. Very grateful for you guys too. Have a wonderful day, evening, midday, morning, wonderful week, and take care of yourself, because it's the holiday season. It can be very stressful, busy, overwhelming, hard for some people, stressful for some, happy for some. Yeah, take care of yourselves. Happy holidays. It's officially Christmas, guys. Putting out the Christmas decorations. Now is the time. It's December. I love you guys. Bye.